Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I'm here today with a book haul. So I have managed to acquire a good few number of books in the past few months and I wanted to share with you guys some of the ones that I've bought, as well as some books I've received from publishers. So majority of the books that I have here I've actually received really kindly from publishers for review, and there's one here that I actually received from an author, which is a little bit of a story behind that one, and then there's a few that I bought myself as well. So I will start with the books that I've bought, and all of these actually have a bit of a theme. These are all books that are kind of like classed as classic books. So I've talked a few times in different videos that I have been wanting to just read more classic books for myself, and I set myself a challenge at the start of the year, which I am actually really badly failing at. First book I want to talk about is Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell, and I haven't read Elizabeth Gaskell before, but I think I have other books of hers on my shelf. It actually says very little about what it is actually about on the back, so I'm actually not 100% sure what it is about, but I've heard really great things about Elizabeth Gaskell's writing, so she is one that I really want to read. This is also a very cute little book that you could put in like your bag or anything. Like, it's just so like itty bitty, and it feels like a really nice book that I'll be able to read, hopefully read quickly, but we will see. I'm hoping to read this really soon. This book I should also say all these books that I got, the classic books I got on the irishbookstore.ie, which is a online secondhand bookstore that I use a lot and I really love. So all of these were €2 or €3. They were like fairly cheap, and this book I just thought was so gorgeous, like the edition of it. So this is The Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield, and someone really recently read this and really enjoyed it, and I cannot remember who it was now, but this is one that actually sounds quite funny. It says here that it is the hilarious fictional diary of a disaster-prone lady of the 1930s and her attempts to keep her somewhat ramshackle household from falling into chaos. So there is her husband, she has a couple of troublesome children, and servants who invariably seem to gain the upper hand. So yeah, it just sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a comedy set in the 30s, and hello, this cover is absolutely gorgeous. And there's actually, I just realised there is a book mark in this that is from a shop in Canada. So yeah, I wonder, this book obviously at some point must have travelled to Canada with a previous owner, so that's kind of cool. I'll keep that in the book because that's kind of nice to keep and know. Then another book I have is, it's two stories in one, so it is Tender as the Night and the Last Tycoon by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Again, I don't know too much about what either of these are about, but The Great Gatsby is one of my all-time favourite classic books to read, and that is obviously by F. Scott Fitzgerald, so I wanted to pick up something else by him, and I've heard quite a good few things about Tender as the Night, and yeah, like the 1920s, the glamour. I love reading books set in that time period. So yeah, I'm looking forward to eventually picking these up as well. This book is one I might leave until like autumn or like around October, Halloween time, and that is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Again, I've heard quite a bit about this book, just that it is very atmospheric and a little bit spooky and horroristic, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one eventually as well. But yeah, those are just some classic books that I have added to my bookshelf that I would really like to read over the course of the next year or so, and fingers crossed I will be able to do it, because I'm pretty poor at actually reading the books that I get on my bookshelf. The next set of books I have here I all received from Hachette Ireland, who are really great and always send me books that I ask for, and yeah, I have a really lovely relationship with them and I can praise them very highly. They're just a lovely publishers to work with. The first one is, and these are all Irish authors, yeah. So this one is There's Something I Have to Tell You by Michelle McDonough, and this one I think sounds really interesting. I might try and read this really soon. It kind of gives kind of like summer coming into autumn vibes with like the bruised apples and stuff on the windowsill. Actually, I just feel like this is might be a really interesting one to read. So this one is about when there's these kind of like an elderly farmer couple, and the two of them are found dead in like the slurry pit on their farm, and obviously the whole community is completely shocked when this happens, and there's a lot of questions about how this could have happened. Was it a tragic accident or was it something else? And they know that the couple's son has recently come back. He's like a businessman, but he's recently come back to the farm, I think, to help out his parents, and he seems completely shocked and obviously devastated by the death of his parents. But now I think people are kind of asking, like, was there something more to it? Could he have something to do with the parents' story or the parents' death? And obviously this story kind of, I guess, reveals what actually happened to the parents and how the two of them ended up dead in the slurry pit, and could it have been kind of like some sort of murderous plot from the son to gain the land, who knows. So yeah, this sounds really interesting, and I do feel like in Ireland in general, like in terms of like, I don't know, crime, like we have crime, but a lot of like the bigger stories sometimes tends to be like not necessarily like this, but like you do hear stories of farmer feuds and murder suicides and things like that. So this actually, like, even the premise of this feels like very, I'm like, it feels like it's something that could happen. So I'm looking forward to reading it and seeing how realistic it actually could be. And yeah, it just seems like one I could really like sink my teeth into. So I'm very much excited for this. The next book I have is a kind of adult contemporary book, and that is My Hot Friend by Sophie White. I really love kind of the neon colours of this. So this one is kind of similar to the Snag List, where we're following three different women. We are following Lexi, Joanne and Claire, and the three of them are all having friendship problems, and I think the three of them kind of end up maybe getting together or trying to figuring out their toxic friendship problems together. And I'm always really interested in books that examine friendship, but in particular female friendship, as I've had a very kind of up and down relationship with female friends throughout like my life. And it wasn't until, I've said it before, it wasn't until I was in my 20s and in college that I kind of found my core friendship group. And it's only a few people, but it's people who are like my ride or dies. And I've had a lot of experiences with toxic friendship in my life. So I'm really looking forward to a book that kind of explores that a little bit, because I think it'll be really, really interesting. And I feel like it's something that isn't explored like just in a general like general terms all that often. I think sometimes we see it in terms of like where like in a thriller, or in terms of like a book that ends up with a crime or a murder or something, but not generally in just like a general contemporary book where it's probably a lot more ordinary actions and ordinary resolutions and stuff to those kind of problems. The next book I have is The Last Days of Joy by Anne Tiernan. This is a book where there's a family who've come together to spend time with their mother, who I think is on her deathbed, and I think there's three siblings, Connor, Francis and Sinead, and their mother is Joy, and the three of them are here to say goodbye to her. But I presume there's stuff going on between the three of them they have to sort out, as well as like obviously the feelings of saying goodbye to your mother and the emotions and the grief that's going to come from that. And then also I think they're kind of like learning, I think, about their mother's life in ways that they never have before, and they're kind of coming to terms with the fact that their mother may be a completely different person to who they thought she always was. So yeah, sounds like another really interesting one to read. And the next book is The Messer Inn by Annie McManus. This one sounds quite interesting. This one is about a girl called Orla, and she moves to London, and she moves in with this housemate and also a band called Shiva. And she also wants to be in the world of music, but she's finding it hard to kind of like break the world of music as well. The fact that like she has to struggle with like rent and like paying to like just survive everyday life. So she's struggling with two jobs, as well as I guess maybe her side hustle of music. But then Shiva, the band, end up doing really, really well, or like they're on, I think, the cusp of a really big break. So it says at the back, this is the story of a young woman thrashing through life, trying to find home in a strange new place. It's also a story about music, how it can break you down and build you back up again, and how to find your rhythm when all you hear is noise. So yeah, I've read a few books that are kind of based around band and music and stuff, and some of them have really worked for me and some haven't. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one works, as yeah, I think books about bands and music and stuff like that are always just really fun ones to kind of immerse yourself in, and emerge immerse yourself in, is the word I'm looking for. And yeah, this is one that I am looking forward to reading. The next few books I got from Book Break or Pan Macmillan, and there's a few here that I'm very much looking forward to. The first book I have here is one, it's not out until October, and I just feel so lucky that I managed to get a proof copy of this. And it's a chunky one, as you can see, and it is A Sword Catcher by Cassandra Clare. Cassandra Clare obviously quite famously has written all of the Mortal Instruments books, and I really, really love the Mortal Instruments like the series and the world of the Mortal Instruments. I've read quite a lot of them. I have fallen down and actually reading them in the past few years. I think Lady Midnight, was it Lady Midnight? Or like that, yeah, Lady Midnight I think was the last one I read. I haven't read the latest trilogy that she has published, but I do eventually want to read them. I just kind of fell out of reading them, and I would kind of like to reread the whole series again from the start, and that's like a very big project that I just haven't gotten around to. But this is like a brand new world that she's bringing out, completely unrelated to Mortal Instruments, so that is very, very exciting. In this one, we are in the vibrant city of Castellane, and we are following an orphan named Kel, who is basically hired to become the prince's body double. So he ends up becoming really, really good friends with the prince, but his job is basically to, if it comes down to it, he has to die in the place of the prince if something was to happen to the prince, or someone tried to, I guess, like make an attempt on the prince's life. It would probably be Kel that would step in and end up taking the prince's place. And putting his life on the line for the crown. And we're also following a physician called Lynn Castor, who I think is also kind of like the physician job in this book. It probably also has a little bit of magic involved, and I think she ends up having a relationship with Kel. I don't know whether it's a friendship or a romantic one, but it says together they'll discover an extraordinary conspiracy, but can forbidden love bring down a kingdom, and will their discoveries plunge their nation into war and the world into chaos? But yeah, sounds really, really good. It, like, everything about this feels like a fantasy that I will really enjoy. So I'm very much looking forward to sinking my teeth into this. Probably at the end of the summer. I prefer to get to it closer to October, so I can remember it really well come October, and maybe I'll do a review video of it or something if people are interested, or maybe a reading vlog or something. So let me know if you'd like to watch one of those. Another kind of, I guess it's historical fantasy book is He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. This is the sequel to She Who Became the Sun, which is a really buzzy book a year and a half ago, which I read and really, really enjoyed. And it's kind of like, people have kind of like marketed it as a Mulan retelling. It's not really a Mulan retelling, but we do see a person who is assigned female at birth and ends up kind of taking on like living life as a man, and going into like becoming a soldier and a kind of a leader within the army, and kind of trying to bring down the empire, I guess, in a way, or like leading a revolution in a way as well. Identity is a real kind of theme in the books, which I find really, really interesting. But this one we're following Zhu kind of in a kind of a role, a leadership role that she really kind of fought for in the first book, and we're seeing maybe her struggle with that, trying to figure out what to do next. We also see where there was a really interesting character in the first book that's kind of like an enemy, but is a very interesting character in their own right. They have a very interesting background in the book. I actually don't know how to say their name. I think it's Yu Yang. But I loved his character in the first book, and I think there might be like Zhu has to think about maybe teaming up with Yu Yang to try and figure out something to do next, and I think that sounds very, very interesting. Yeah. It's out in August, so I should probably actually read it pretty soon. The next book I have is Bookshops and Bone Dust, and this is by Travis Baldry, and this is it's a sequel, but it's actually set 20 years before Legends and Lattes, which I also do have and I have not read yet. I'm kind of waiting for more like cozy, colder times to read Legends and Lattes. Like, I feel like Legends and Lattes is a book you need to read with like a blanket, and I don't actually drink coffee, so it would be like hot chocolate or tea or something. That's what I'm kind of waiting for when it comes to Legends and Lattes. So that's what I'm waiting for. So before I read that and then read this. But this one we are following a character called Viv, but they're a mercenary, and she's been left behind in this kind of sleepy town, and she's working in a bookshop, and she ends up, even though it's like kind of sleepy and there's not much happening, she's kind of getting bored, and then I think someone comes into the town that kind of causes a little bit of mishap or trouble, and then she has to try and figure things out. Presuming this will be like what I hear about the first one, which is that it's just lovely and cozy fantasy, and I'm all here for cozy fantasy being like a big genre at the moment, because like there can't be anything more just nice than a nice cozy fantasy book. And the next book I got, I was actually so surprised. I actually can't remember if I did request this, but it was just a really lovely surprise in the post one day, and that was Lured by Heart by Emma Donoghue. And like, look at this proof cover. Like, it'd be helpful if I actually showed you the book. Yeah, it's like, I just love it. It's so nice. So nice. It has like flap, like, I just love it. This one, Emma Donoghue, everyone knows I love Emma Donoghue. She's one of my favourite writers, but we had a bad experience. We had a little bit of a blip with her last book, Haven, which I really didn't like. It's the first time I've really not liked a book by Emma Donoghue. This one is set in 1805, and it's actually following the story of Anne Lister, who I think is quite a famous I presume there's like famous like lesbian character in history. Gentleman Jack is what is like, I think it's actually a TV show that's actually about her life, and this is about Anne Lister and her first love, Eliza Rain, and it's when they're in boarding school and they meet when they're 14 years old when they meet first, and I think it's about their friendship, and then as their romantic and their connection, which remains with them for the rest of their lives. And yeah, that sounds more like the Emma Donoghue that I like. A little bit of like gay, a little bit of just friendship, a little bit of connections, historical fiction. Really like it. It's not following monks on a deserted island eating a load of puffins. So I'm happy. So I'm really looking forward to reading this, and this one is on my TBR list for July because I think this is out in August. Yes, so I should be reading this pretty soon. The next book I have here is kind of a thriller book, I think, and it is I got this by Quercus books, and this is The End of Us by Olivia Kernan. And this one, it seems like I've read a few books that are similar to this in the past in terms of like some like a couple or a family moving next door to people and then like shit going down, and this kind of feels like one of those books. And it is about Miles and Lana Butler, who live on this new development, but they're after, I think, like putting themselves into like a really hefty mortgage, and they're really struggling to basically like pay their way and being able to pay their mortgage because they kind of, I guess they went for like looks over like reality when it came to like how they were going to live. And then Gabriel and Holly Wright have just moved in next door, and they're very sophisticated, ambitious, and they seem to be very, very wealthy. And then all the couples end up like having, I think, like a dinner together, and they start talking about their money worries, and basically it says a solution is suggested between the couples. No one thought they were being serious, no one agreed they'd actually go through with it, and no one mentioned it would involve murder. So there's some sort of scam, I don't know whether it's life insurance or some sort of scam going on where they can get money. And yeah, they're basically blaming the other couple for trying to solve their money problems, I think. But yeah, this one sounds like it'd just be like an interesting read. I've read a few of these where, like, as I said, it's like the person next door is kind of like creepy or unsettling or untrustworthy, and they're often quite like fun books to read. So I'm looking forward to this. The last book I want to talk about is a book that was actually given to me by the author, and that is Poor by Katrina O'Sullivan. So this is Grit, Courage, and the Life-Changing Value of Self-Belief. And this is a book that's kind of been buzzy, actually, kind of a non-fiction book that's been buzzy in Ireland over the past month or so. And this is basically Katrina O'Sullivan. I think she is a professor now, isn't she? She's a doctor. And this is basically about her childhood, a memoir of her growing up. She ends up becoming a teenage mother at 15, becoming homeless for a while, and then obviously she builds herself up and really makes an amazing life for herself. And this is basically just her story of how she did it. And the story of how I got this book is actually, my mum works for like a kind of a big cafe chain in Ireland, and Katrina is actually a customer who comes in, and my mum obviously got chatting to her, and she knew about her book and that her book was coming out. And my mum, she doesn't know much about like YouTube or anything. She wouldn't watch my videos, but she knows obviously that I talk about books as a hobby, and I put stuff online about books. So she basically obviously was like pimping me out to Katrina and telling her like, oh, my daughter reads books and like reviews books and stuff. And Katrina very, very kindly brought a copy of the book in to my mum for my mum to give to me. And I actually kept the little note that my mum left with the book one of the days when I went up to the house and she wasn't there, and she was like, Aoife, can you blog this book? This is the lady I was talking to you about. Thanks, son, ma'am. And I was just like, that's just so cute. So I'm actually I have my bookmark in it, so I'm hoping to read this for my next physical book that I'm going to read, and I'll be able to review it soon. But yeah, I just thought there was a nice story behind that my mum kind of like pimped me out and got me this book for me. So yeah, and Katrina sounds like a really lovely person that she would even do that. And yeah, that she wanted to share her book with my mum and with me. So yeah, that's really nice. So just a nice story. All the books that I have hauled, this ended up being a much longer video than I thought, so thank you for sticking around if you did. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys again next time.